Does Tarkin own Crosshair? This is the question I'm going to discuss today, along with character development of Crosshair, as I break down Bad Batch Season 1, Episode 15, Return to Kamino. Overall, this episode was fantastic and fun. We finally get a good deal of character development of Crosshair, and we discover that he's a much more complex character than we thought he was. But he's conflicted and lacks agency and understanding of the world around him. I'm Nate, this is my YouTube channel. If you like the content in today's video, make sure to hit the like button or leave a comment to let me know your thoughts. Episode 15 was released on August 6th, 2021 on Disney+. In this episode, Omega, Tech, Echo, and Wrecker head to Kamino, where Hunter is being held captive by Crosshair. The episode was directed by Nathaniel Villanueva, who's a storyboard artist. This is his 6th episode of Bad Batch, and the script was written by Matt Michnovitz, and this is his 3rd episode of writing for Bad Batch. The episode starts on board Crosshair's shuttle, where Hunter is being held captive under observation. Crosshair then takes Hunter's comm device and turns the distress beacon on. Hunter says that the guys will know it's a trap, to which Crosshair responds that they will still come. This episode is designed to be an ensemble story, and for the most part it is. An ensemble is one in which several different characters own their own stories or scenes, but there is always one character that owns the main story or the bulk of the story. And in this episode, it's Crosshair. Crosshair makes all the major decisions that drive the story. We've been wanting more from Crosshair all season, and we finally get it. He might not develop or change much, but we get to know him a great deal here, and it's some fantastic stuff. On Ord Mantell, the guys make repairs to the Havoc Marauder. While Echo works, Omega anxiously paces back and forth, wanting to get back to the task of saving Hunter. Echo asks for her spanner wrench, and she easily finds it in the bin. Though this seems innocuous, we see that Omega has learned a lot in her time with the guys. With the systems back online, Tech notices that Hunter's comm device has been activated, but he is no longer on Daro. And Omega asks the all-too pertinent question, where is he? Then we cut to Kamino, where Crosshair's shuttle comes into orbit and heads to Tapoka City. I'm going to talk a lot about the writing in this episode, and here we get the first inkling of how good it is. This is a great writing technique in which a character makes a statement or asks a question at the end of a scene. But rather than have another character state the answer for us, we cut to the next scene and immediately get our answer. Matt Michnovitz is a veteran writer on Dave Filoni's team, and with this episode, he's certainly showing off his skills. In the hangar, Rampart tells Hunter that their exploits on Ryloth got his attention, and one of Crosshair's troopers stays behind to tell Rampart that she questions Crosshair's motives with his former squad. She doesn't trust any of the clones. Rampart responds that if Crosshair's plans fail, none of the clones will be a problem anymore. You may be wondering how Crosshair is the main protagonist in this episode if he's the bad guy. The character interactions in this episode are what screenwriting guru John Truby calls four-corner opposition. In one corner is Crosshair, our protagonist. A protagonist doesn't need to be good, it just means he's the lead. Crosshair's goal is to get the Bad Batch to come back to him and join the Empire before Rampart destroys them. In the opposite corner is Rampart. His goal is to destroy Tapoka City. He doesn't care for the clones and would rather have them dead. In an adjacent corner is Crosshair's female Dark Trooper. She doesn't trust Crosshair and is willing to sell him out for Rampart's approval. But Rampart doesn't care about her either. He just sees her as a useful pawn. He doesn't care if she's dead or not. If she lives, fine. So she just needs to stay alive. In the remaining corner is the Bad Batch. They want to get Hunter back. They care about Crosshair and would like to get him back too. They don't want Crosshair's plan to succeed, but they also don't want Rampart's plan to succeed. In the end, Crosshair and the Bad Batch are better off joining forces if they want to survive Rampart's plan. Crosshair is the main protagonist because he is driving the story forward, and Rampart is the antagonist because he's the main roadblock to everyone's plan. On board the Havoc Marauder, the guys know they are headed into a trap, but Omega has provided them with coordinates to a secret landing pad used by Nalase so they can sneak into the city. They arrive in orbit and pass 3 Venator-class Star Destroyers on the way to the surface. The transit is rough, dark, and stormy, just like the day they left Kamino back in Episode 1 when they faced off against Crosshair for the first time. They find Nalase's secret platform, but realize it's a significant distance from the city, though Omega tells them about the tube system that connects the whole city underneath the surface of the water. In the tube system, Tech notices that Omega seems troubled, and he asks her if she's okay. It doesn't matter, she says. Saving Hunter is the only thing on her mind. We get the sense that Omega is either dreading her return to her former stomping grounds, or she knows the guys are about to see something that will change their perspective on her and possibly themselves. Crosshair and his troopers escort Hunter through the empty halls of the city, where Hunter surmises that the facility is being decommissioned and that the clones will be next. But Crosshair rebuffs him, saying that the ones who matter, like him, won't meet that end. And here we get a clue about Crosshair's worldview. He believes he's inside the circle that matters. In the central clone platform, Crosshair's troopers have detected the Havoc Marauder entering the atmosphere. Again, this is good writing because it doesn't leave room for the audience to wonder why the Empire wasn't able to detect the Havoc Marauder. We don't ever get the idea that the enemy that the Bad Batch is going up against is dumb. The guys will need to be on top of their game if they want to succeed. Crosshair tells his troopers to do nothing. The Bad Batch will come to them because they don't leave their own behind. He then looks at Hunter and says, "Usually." Hunter responds that Crosshair tried to kill them. They didn't have a choice. They had to leave him. And this is the setup for the climax. Crosshair and the Bad Batch have two sides of the same story. They both feel abandoned by the other. As an outside observer, though, it's not hard to see that Crosshair's story is skewed. Yes, he feels abandoned, but what's really at play is that both sides have discovered they hold different worldviews. If any reconciliation is going to happen, one side's view of the world is going to have to change. Omega and the guys arrive in Nayla Se's lab. It's empty and well cleaned. Wrecker notes that it looks like any other clone lab, but Omega says it's not. Most of those in Tapoka City don't know about the lab. Omega goes on to explain that she was created there along with Experimental Unit 99. They were all created there. She tells them that she was there when they were created, which is something that we've suspected for a while. In Episode 9, Bounty Lost, the guys learn that Omega is an unaltered first-generation clone of Jango Fett, which means that she has Jango's raw genetic material. So we can naturally assume that Omega was indeed present for the creation of the Bad Batch, because she most likely did not have any enhanced aging like the rest of the clones. Suddenly, a noise interrupts the conversation. They find AZ-3 hiding behind some equipment. He's been evading the Empire. He further tells them they've been deactivating droids and sending key Kaminoan medical personnel onto transports. Anyone who resisted were terminated. Wrecker can't believe that clone troopers would follow such orders, but AZ-3 rebuts Wrecker by telling them that the troopers were not clone troopers. All the clone troopers were evacuated off the planet to an unknown location with the exception of Crosshair. Back in the central clone platform, Hunter pleads with Crosshair to listen. The Empire has been taking planets and silencing anyone who stands against them, but Crosshair is indignant. Hunter will soon see the bigger picture, he claims. Hunter states that the Empire is using Crosshair, which is something that is obvious to us. This is a good example of the four-corner opposition I was talking about a moment ago. Crosshair has his plan, and Hunter is presenting himself as a hurdle to that plan. Hunter thinks it's Crosshair's inhibitor chip. Though Hunter doesn't say it, we know he's frustrated that Crosshair can't see the obvious. In four-corner opposition, each corner has conflict with most or all the other corners. The guys have conflict with Crosshair and Rampart. Crosshair has conflict with the guys, Rampart, and his Dark Troopers. Rampart has conflict with everyone, and the Dark Troopers have conflict with Crosshair, are trying to appease Rampart, and want to kill the guys. Omega and the guys rush across the city towards Hunter. The halls are eerily empty except a group of TK troopers moving gear. Tech gets an updated position on Hunter and they move towards the training room. They go into the training room equipment locker to come up with a plan. They know Crosshair will pick them off. They decide to use the lift rather than the main entrance. Echo tells Omega to stay, which he's not happy with, but Wrecker agrees. Crosshair is after the guys, not her, or so he thinks. The guys raise the lift into the training room only to find out they are surrounded by Crosshair and his Dark Troopers. And once again, the writer has done some good work. We want the Bad Batch to win, and we're hoping they outsmart their enemy. But in this episode, everything they do, they're one step behind. So it comes down to their tactical skills. But Crosshair tells them to drop their weapons as the Dark Troopers close in. And with this, the Bad Batch has no other options. The only way they are going to get out of this situation is for Omega to save them or for Crosshair to turn and join them. And we know that Omega is not up to the task. She's learned a lot, but not that much. And honestly, if Omega saved them, it would ruin the rising tension. From the beginning of the episode, Hunter and Crosshair have been at each other, trying to convince each other to change the course of their lives. Hunter nods and they drop their weapons, to which Crosshair reminds Hunter that following orders isn't so hard. He then asks the guys where Omega is. Wrecker claims she didn't come, but Crosshair knows it's a lie, and he sends one of his troopers to find her. Echo is ahead of the game though, and sends a message to Omega. In the lower room, Omega receives the signal, but rather than flee like she was told to do, she decides to stay and fight using the droids in the room. In the training room, the Dark Troopers press Crosshair to do something. Now the other corner of the four-corner opposition is pressing on Crosshair, and this is where the writing gets really good. All along, the Bad Batch have been one step behind and are seemingly being stripped of their ideas and now their weapons. All they have left is words. Crosshair's troopers have words and guns. Crosshair has owned the decisions up until now, and he will own this decision. He can use his words or his gun. He chooses words. It's all the Bad Batch have left, so that's what he's going with. He reveals his anger with Hunter and the squad for leaving him, for betraying what they stood for to stand with the Republic. But Hunter states that they stood for each other. Crosshair then states he's going to give them a chance, something he feels they never gave him. In the lower room, Crosshair's Dark Trooper finds Omega reprogramming a droid. Back in the training room, Hunter pleads with Crosshair some more. Omega belongs with them, but Crosshair argues that she deserves better than to live with fugitives in constant danger. If he wants to protect her, then let her go. Crosshair goes on to explain his motives. They are different than the Regs. They are superior. The Empire needs them. He releases Hunter from his manacles. In the last video, I talked about individuality in soldiers, and here we see a soldier who is much more complex than the TK troopers and Rampart. We discover that Crosshair has a skewed view of the world around him. So in addition to understanding oneself, someone who has full agency and thus a sense of individuality must also have an accurate picture of the world. Crosshair tells his troopers to stand down, but they refuse. So he kills them with a single shot that ricochets off several reflection devices he has clearly placed around the room. In the lower room, AZ-3 activates one of the droid lockers, which knocks out the Dark Trooper. Back up in the training room, Crosshair goes on. Think of all the things we could do, he pleads with the guys. Join the Empire, he says, and you will have purpose again. Hunter responds by stating, you really don't get who we are, do you? Crosshair tells them not to make the same mistake twice, not to become his enemy. Hunter states they were never his enemy. This scene was gripping because we see that Crosshair is the soldier that has a high view of himself as a soldier, but also a skewed view of the world. He thinks he can manipulate the Empire. He thinks he knows more than he does. He doesn't seem to understand Rampart, the Empire, or even his former squad. He has a mostly accurate picture of himself, and because of this, he is able to control his anger and have compassion for his old squad mates. But his compassion ends there. He is corrupted, and we know that whatever Crosshair does at this point, it's going to take work to get him to turn from the Empire, to grow. But there is a question that remains. Why is it that Crosshair seems to have deviated from the person he was at the beginning of the season? He was a grumpy guy, but now he is twisted. We'll get to this a little later though. Then several droids show up and the guys engage in combat against them. But instead of their guns set for stun, the droids shoot for real. As Omega and AZ-3 watch from above in a tower, they realize that Omega activated too many droids. As the guys in Omega fend off the oncoming droids, Hunter and Crosshair battle it out hand to hand. Again, this is another example of Crosshair not understanding the world and those around him. He thinks he could take on Hunter, but Crosshair's strength has always been his ability to kill from a distance, not face to face. Hunter subdues Crosshair for a moment and is able to take out a few droids, but there are too many of them. They seem surrounded until suddenly Crosshair joins them and they fight off the droids like old times, and it seems that Crosshair has accepted Hunter's role as the leader and his own role as an expert shot. But let's not get too hopeful. Off to the side, the Dark Trooper who AZ-3 knocked out has waken up and is now watching the fight. She sees her fellow Dark Troopers on the ground, dead. On the way out of the room, she contacts Rampart to tell him that Crosshair has lost control. Rampart orders her to pull out and let the clones die together. On board his Star Cruiser, Rampart reports to Tarkin that all essential personnel have been evacuated and the cloning technology is under Imperial control. Tarkin praises him and orders the city to be destroyed. Rampart moves his ship into position. Crosshair's plans have failed. He hedged his bets on his old squad, and now he's got a mostly dead Dark Trooper squad, and his old friends angry with him. They work together to finish off the remaining droids, and Hunter holds Crosshair at gunpoint. He pleads with him once again. This isn't him, it's his inhibitor chip. But Crosshair states that he had his inhibitor chip removed a long time ago. A shocking statement for the overall story. We'll get to this in a moment, but a couple things to think about until then. If we recall back to Episode 1, Aftermath, Crosshair was put under a procedure to enhance the programming of his inhibitor chip. He survives the procedure. But then in Episode 3, Replacements, Crosshair is back in the medical bay undergoing another brain procedure. This time it is unknown what the procedure was, except that Tarkin is overseeing it and that Crosshair survived. Crosshair and Hunter stare each other down like an old western high noon showdown. Crosshair attempts to bring his rifle up to shoot Hunter, but Hunter stuns him first. With all the threats gone, Omega runs to Hunter to give him a hug, a rather feminine thing to do. Hunter goes back to Crosshair. He seems okay. Tech jumps in to tell Hunter that 3 Venator-class cruisers are closing in on the city and they need to leave immediately. Hunter tells Wrecker to grab Crosshair. He's coming with them, something which garners a nod of agreement and affirmation from Omega. And we see that Hunter has learned to have compassion without prompting. He's been slowly growing in this realm throughout the season, and now we see that he has come to a point where Omega does not need to say anything. The guys run through the empty passageways of Tipoca City. We then get several shots of empty and abandoned parts of the city. Bad Batch's old room, the dining facility, the clone tubes. We get the sense of loss. The scene is a goodbye to old times, to good times. Not only does Bad Batch feel the coming loss, but we as the audience must say goodbye to the Clone Wars for good and join the Bad Batch in this new world run by the Empire. On board his cruiser, Rampart orders his crew to open fire. Inside the city, the guys in Omega open the doors, leading outside only to find incoming gunfire and imminent destruction. They head back inside. In the final shot, we see the 3 Venator-class cruisers raining down fire and destruction on Tipoca City. And now to the questions of Bad Batch's overall mission and purpose. Will Clone Force 99 fix their own inhibitor chips? This question was answered in Episode 7, Battle Scars. Will Clone Force 99 get back Crosshair and fix his inhibitor chip? When Crosshair states that he had his chip removed a long time ago, it's clear that Tarkin had it removed in Episode 3, Replacements. Looking back at those 2 scenes from Episodes 1 and 3, I noticed something I didn't notice before. Only Tarkin and Nayla Say were in the room at the time of the procedures. I have a feeling that Tarkin was running an experiment on Crosshair to intensify his enhancement and then remove the chip to see if the enhancement degrades or not. I think that Tarkin is running his own experiment on Crosshair, possibly to see if implanting behavior chips into normal humans could be a plausible way to raise up a loyal army. In the end, I think the plan fails and it results in the less than competent stormtroopers in A New Hope. The other option, or maybe even a second task, is that Tarkin made Crosshair a sleeper agent, someone who will take out Rampart when the time comes, when Rampart gets too greedy. When it comes to whether Crosshair will ever return to his old squad, I think that it will be an ongoing development. Dave Filoni likes to play the long game, and this is certainly something that he's playing up. I don't think Crosshair will turn sides in the next episode or even die. Filoni needs to build this story up and cash in on the payoff at the end of the series. Although I'm writing this well after I've seen the final episode, my initial thoughts going into Episode 16 was that Crosshair would not turn, but I wondered where he would go. It seems that Rampart has no love for him, but now it also seems that Tarkin has a guinea pig to retrieve. I think Crosshair has a long road ahead of him, but that the guys will never give up and they will eventually get him back. Will Clone Force 99 save their brothers? It's clear that the Bad Batch have a mystery to solve. Where was Rampart sending the remaining clones and clone younglings? And what is he doing with them? The Bad Batch need to find this out. Will Clone Force 99 reconcile the clones with the Jedi? This issue is not addressed in this episode. Thanks for watching, and if you like the content in today's video, please hit the like button, leave a comment, share, or subscribe.